Hey, everybody, welcome to the AMP session for this week. We're going to be talking about appraisals, what to do before, maybe a little bit about what at, and getting the listings. Today, we are joined with a guest, Tony Fanfula. If you haven't met myself, I'm Rob Davis, licensee in Western Australia, and Tony is a licensee for Victoria and also helps with some of our training components and those kind of things. So, Tony, welcome to AMP.
Thanks, Rob.
We're gonna talk a little bit about I suppose one of the most important things that an agent can think about. Oh, there's so many important things, but if we don't treat we talked last time about lead generation, and then we're moving this time. We are talking a little bit about moving from, okay, so you've got an actual lead. What happens now? And so that's fantastic. But the way that I think about it is there's kind of 9 components in a sale. You've got the lead generation, you've got the appraisal, the listing, the negotiation, the contract, the conditions, and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got settlement and referrals from that. So we're kind of at that front end stage. So Tony, maybe you set the scene of what you want to cover off on today.
Yeah, well, like you said, we talked about the prospecting, and lo and behold, someone has responded. And it's that time between, for me, from the response from the prospect through to appearing at their front door at whatever time. And it's important, as you know, how you follow up, how you record the information, what you're going to tell them, what you're going to give them, what you may email, drop in their letterbox, all of the different things. And this is not an exercise in you have to do all these things, but it's just, there's a lot of ideas. And I think a lot of the people on our screen now will have a lot of ideas, and we're all doing it every day. But it's just about, making sure we do the important steps with the follow-ups and making the appointments. As simple as, when's a day and time that suits you is something that, we need to ask the client. Once you've made the appointment, sending a text message just to confirm it, just a powerful thing, small thing, text, thank you for your time on the phone, just confirming I'm going to be there on Thursday at 2:00. And I'll be happy to answer all of the questions you have and look forward to meeting you then. Whatever, something like that. But just that text message, because now, you may have put a link to your Blink or your link tree in that text message. Now they've got your contact details. If they've got that link, they've got so much information they can get access to just that little text back. So little things to just have people develop a plan for. It's not so much the big chunk of, oh, I'm going into this appraisal and I want to list it, and how am I going to do that? It's all the little things prior that are going to help you get that listing on Thursday afternoon, or perhaps in a year's time when the person decides to sell. And, we can talk about what we do then. But I'm just wanting to, really we looked at basics when it came to prospecting, just basics when it comes to that lead to appraisal stages, and just what you might do, where you might get the info.
I'm glad we're talking about this subject, because so much of we're coming in from an agent perspective so often. We're doing our prospecting, we're doing our phone calls, or marketing, or DLs, or digitals, whatever it is that we're doing, because we want to get leads, turn them into appraisals, turn them into listings, turn them into commission dollars. And we want to help people along the way. But sometimes we forget that the person on the reverse side that's receiving the marketing, the phone calls, all that kind of stuff, we don't spend a lot of time looking at it from their perspective, and what we would call a UX in computer world. What's their user experience like? And so what you're talking about is really, in the current world, just covering off the real basics of customer service. And I think so many listings are either won or lost before we ever get through the front door.
Absolutely. Yeah, singing my song. This is so critical. if someone rings and you book an appointment and the next contact you have is knocking on their door, you've missed some steps,
Yeah.
and you've missed some, what previous mentors used to call deposits in their emotional bank account.
Yeah.
And it's just all those touch points, looking forward to seeing you. I'm going to drop something in your letterbox over the next, we're not going to see you for a couple of days. I'll drop something in your letterbox just so you got a little bit more information about me and my company and what we do. That might be electronic. You might have got their email, but just to, without being annoying, but just to send them things of value in that day or two that may pass between making the time and getting to the appointment. And often you'll find, that couple, if it's a couple, say they could have been, oh, gee, it's really good that Rob sent me that info. That's fantastic, isn't it? The other agent's not doing it, and I just think it's an important thing to develop. I'm certainly not suggesting today of what the content may look like, but we're given some clues. Certainly the blink or the link tree links in your text message, I think, is powerful, and then where that goes to and how you develop those things. And there's other training I think Chris has done on that, but just giving them enough information for them to feel comfortable about meeting with you, that you're experienced, you're professional. And this all goes to the point of this agent can sell my house,
Yeah.
and they know what they're doing, and you've developed trust already with that prospect before you've even met them.
I think what you're saying there is so important because, we talked about the framework and we've been talking about it at EXP for a long time and other places. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. So they've become aware of you through your marketing or whatnot. They are, for whatever reason, in a stage where that's of interest to them to kind of get an idea where their property's at. And as you said, it could be they're ready to list now, or it could be 12 months from now, 24 months from now, whatever it is. Um, and what I love about all the stuff that you can do before the listing appointment is it means that when you're there, you can focus totally on them and their needs and asking good questions and developing a game plan for them without having to say, I'm Rob Davis. I'm with this company. Who's this company? This company is so and so. Who's Rob Davis? Well, I'm so amazing. I've got this award, that award, whatever. You should go with me. I'm number one. I'm number one in the suburb because I've got an ego complex. So I need to tell you that. It's a weird thing we do in our industry. I've never been to a dentist and they go, hey, just before we start, I want to let you know I'm number one dentist in my firm and I've done more cavities than anybody. You're like, what? What are you talking about?
That's gold. Yeah. Look,
You know,
I've never pushed the ego line. I know that it's a big thing in real estate, but I think just continually evidencing that you understand their circumstances, you know what to do, and you know how to get a result. And you mentioned just before about their UE or to
their
walk a
UX,
mile
yeah.
in their shoes, walk and think about the times. I've recently sold houses, both own residence and investment properties, and it's a hell of an experience. And to perhaps we lose track of just how monumental an experience it is to sell a house of your own, and not not just looking at it from real estate agent. We can get very absorbed into it's just, I just want to get it on so I can get the marketing started. I know what I'm going to do. Open for inspection. You've just, our brains go very quickly to that. But if you slow down just that little bit, show some empathy, and I think the ladies here have a bit of a head start on us blokes with that. But just it goes a long way if you can show some understanding of just what those people are about to go through and acknowledging it with them.
Tony, I want to just ask you some questions, if that's okay. What would you advise, or what have you done in the past, whatnot? So let's say you get that inquiry that comes in. It might come in traditionally through a phone call, but it could be a email or something like that. But What are some of those things that you feel an agent can have prepared? And how do we go from that lead coming in, questions you might ask on the phone, setting the appointment, all that kind of stuff?
Well, very important one there. Questions you're asking on the phone. I used to have a sheet stuck on my wall about the questions. Um, the one that used to uncover a lot of things was, for me, was, where are you thinking of heading?
Yep.
All of a sudden, lots come out. Timelines, circumstances, divorces and the like, lots of things come out from that question. What is it about this home that you'd like to change, or, with the next one, things like that. But then there's the basics of, we are going to appraise a property, so we want to know a little bit about it. Of, can you tell me how much land you're on? How big's the house? How many bedrooms, bathrooms? What sort of vintage is it? Has it been updated? They're probably the ones that are going to help you uncover its value. And those sorts of questions, the ones that I always ask: have you sold a property before? But you're starting to get into things that you probably want to ask when you're face to face if you go too far. So
Yeah, I only normally have about two or three questions that I like to ask. And it's more just about the situation.
yeah.
And then I re-ask that when I'm there, because sometimes the answer I get on the phone is different to the answer that I get in person. Um, there was a phase within the industry, and I'd be interested in those on the that are here with us live. There was a movement within the last decade or so to really be strong on pre-list kits and also pre-appointment questionnaires. Matt Steinway did a great session more than 10 years ago now on the fact that he sends out a pre-appointment questionnaire and just asks them to have it available to review. And it's asking questions about the property, about their motivation, about what's important to them, is like agent experience or commission or whatnot. I think when when we first get into the industry, certainly originally when I got into the industry, and we joked before, yes, there was electricity, not much of it, not consistent, but there was electricity. I used to play this game in my head, not realizing what was really at stake. If I go there and I give the highest price, the lowest fee, or the whatever, I'm really good. I've got a good chance of getting a listing. Now, I don't talk about any of that stuff really until it's appropriate in the actual appraisal. Have you had experience with pre-list kits and questionnaires? Do you use them? Do you recommend them, or have you adapted?
Um, my experience is my appraisals were a very conversational appraisal. I hardly opened a piece of paper. So I'm probably, unfortunately, not the best person to ask that. I took it all with me. I left it all behind. So yes, I did have pre-list kits and things, but I wasn't going through the pages, which I know there are some people that would like to do that. But I think you need to have, certainly, results, evidence of your marketing information, that sort of thing with you. If you're talking about a pre-list kit, something you may send. I did just put a link, and I noticed Clinton's replied saying that there's no permission, so I'll fix that in a moment. There's our RP proposals is a fantastic digital pre-listing kit. So if you're not using the RP proposals or Realtair or something, but RP proposals is part of the subscription with EXP. So I encourage everyone to use that. There's training available that's been recorded on RP proposals. So, for Clinton and for everyone else that's watching, listening, digital pre-listing presentations, that's where I would get mine now, from RP proposals. All editable, put imagery in there, whatever you need to do, sections in or out. That's probably more advanced than anything I did previously. I used to use web books. and I'd create pre-listing kits in web books, but it was a static thing. Whereas the RP proposals, it is live. You know, plus you can see if the person is clicking on it and what page they're on and all the rest of it. So you're talking about some fantastic tech that I believe that we all should be using. As I said, it's free. Absolutely use it. And a lot of the prompts and things of what we may include in a presentation or a pre-listing kit are certainly there.
I want to branch off from that. Just while you were talking, it reminded me we've got agents in 5 different states, and they are working in different demographics. Some are working in units or apartments, some are working on rural and acreage, some are working in mums and dad houses and mortgage belts, some are working in well-heeled suburbs or canal developments or that kind of stuff. How do you see what they're doing changing based on their environment?
What they're doing as far as where they're moving or why they're moving.
No, I'm talking from our agents here, those that are on the screen and those that are watching the replay. What do they need to be cognizant of, or what do they need to be thinking about based on the demographics of the people that they're serving and based on their location, etc.?
Yeah, again, it's back to putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about the type of person. If you're working in a you know, those varying types of environments, you should be tailoring your conversation to, you know, what that person may well be going through. You know, if it's people that are going to retirement, you know, selling their last sale, which I dealt with a lot with seniors, and just thinking about how to support and you know, help those people versus, you know, a young first home by selling their first home, moving up to their family home perhaps, and just what they may need, their needs may be where it comes to schools and shops and different things, and right through all of the demographics, just thinking about what are going to be the trigger points. I just read this morning on a lead agent's email, you know, big push at the moment for people. They're not so much looking at school zones, they're looking at wanting to be near in-laws. So this is the new push of families moving to be near where the parents of those parents are, so that they can have
So they
support
can
for
raid the
children.
pantry, what we were talking
Well,
about
that's true,
just
but you
before
know,
we went live with the recording.
they you know, these people are in a world where they are working so much that the management of children becomes a problem. We've all
Yeah,
been there.
family
Um,
support's important.
family support, so that they're, you know, so, you know, moving to that for that purpose. So just being really aware of the market you're working in and what their needs are. And you know, we all know where the schools and the shops are, but for some people there are more important things than schools and shops. And just looking more into that and thinking about that with your presentation. Um, you know, there's no point talking about schools if you're going to see a senior who's going to retirement village. You need to be talking about, you know, hospitals and doctors and chemists and you know, transport, things like that, rather than schools. So just, you know, tailoring your conversation to things that's important for those people.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And what I would say or add to that is the challenge for you as an agent is to develop your own strategy. And I saw James Stacy, one of our icon agents, just popped in. You need
Mm.
to be a chameleon depending on your environment. And what I'd say to that is I found it very helpful when I went from the winging it phase of my real estate career to the actually having a game plan. So regardless of whether I was at a beachfront or if I was at a little unit, my strategy when I was at the appraisal didn't change. And you need to have a really confirmed strategy. I'm a big believer in question-based appraisals because any of us can kind of eyeball what's a property worth. Well, I'll come in and I'll look and I'll see, is the presentation a 10, a 7, a 5, a 3, a 1? Okay, well, based on that, that's going to impact price at whatever. The last 4 sold similar to this for this. The market's going up, so it's probably a little bit more. So we can quickly identify a price. But it was only later in my real estate career that I learned that identifying a price was only probably about 15 to 20% of an appraisal. The 80% was connecting with the people, finding out what their situation was, what their hurts were, where their pain points were, what their hopes and dreams were. And one of the questions that I would really encourage anyone to start asking, and we've done lots of question based training. Bjorn's done some fantastic training on the 5 Ws and whatnot. But one of the first questions that I have adapted in my presentation is, Tony, do you mind if I ask you some direct questions so I can best help you?
Mm.
That's the very
Yeah.
first question I ask. I do my appraisal in what I would consider a 3-act play. Act 1 is the meet and greet, Act 2 is the tour, and Act 3 is the let's make a game plan. But at the very first meet and greet, I ask if I can sit at the kitchen table or whatever seems appropriate in the environment. And I just say, even if I've talked to you on the phone and whatnot, I'll say, so Tony, do you mind if I ask you some direct questions so I can best help you?
Yep.
Follow-up
And
question to that is, what makes you want to have an appraisal now?
mm,
And I might have asked that on the phone already, and they'll say one thing, and I get there and it's something else.
mm. And again, it's you're you're not there to be their friend. You're there to offer the best advice you possibly can, and sometimes asking the hard questions needs to be done in order to help them best. And starting with that question sort of sets the scene of this is going to be a discovery session where there may be things to discuss that aren't comfortable when they're talking to a stranger. Remember,
Yeah.
we walk in as a complete stranger, but that does take some confidence, and all of us here aren't in the same level of confidence or experience. If you're a relatively new agent, you're going to be not as confident asking those hard questions. So, you more just want to keep the person talking so that things can come out rather than asking direct, like Rob's obviously confident enough to do, and many who are here. But the more you have them talking and keeping them on subject, the more you have them talking about where they're going, why they're going, what they hope that will be, how long they may be there, what their experience has been. The more they're talking about that, the more they're going to give you the information that you need to best go to the next stage. And we all know that if we can have them talking more than we are, that they will feel like we're a good listener. And everyone likes a good listener because everyone likes to talk. And for many of us, it took me probably 10 years to teach myself to listen. And I'm still not the best at it. So for everyone here, if that's something where you're finding yourself really talking a lot, you've got to get out of that. And if you find yourself really talking about you and your house and your life, stop it. Sorry, but just it's not appropriate. Little snippets perhaps to connect, but look, I've been in appraisals with people that are just about them, their life, their house, what they're doing. It's not, don't do it.
Here's a little segue, not a segue, but a comment on that. Nobody cares.
No. That's reality. And
as much as we care, and it's important to us, if I hired a plumber to come in and fix my toilet like I had to a few weeks ago, and he was sitting there going, so anyway, at my house, I've got this wonderful toilet and it does this, and I've got, the Super Flush 2000 and whatever.
just
They're
fix
like,
the toilet.
just can you fix my toilet? Can you, and I
So
know we're
this
very
is
important. We're very important as real estate people. I mean, we tell ourselves we're very important and we're full of our own importance and some of that at times. It makes, at least there are people within our industry, and I don't mean to belittle any of us, but we get caught up in our own nonsense instead of focusing on our clients and what their
well,
goals are.
I can tell you it takes leaving the industry to understand how of little importance we are to most of the population. I got out of the industry for a few years back, or 20 years ago, and realized during those few years just how insignificant real estate companies and agents were, whereas prior I had thought we were just on the top of mind for everybody. Obviously, isn't that the case? But it's just being, we become top of mind for a moment when the house needs to be sold, but a lot of our marketing is pumping out to 100% of the population when there's only a fraction of the percentage that is actually doing anything that day or week or month. And just to think about that. But
Tony, I want to ask you a question. What so we've talked about, we got that phone call, that leads called you. Hey, I got your notice, your flyer, I saw your ad, whatever it is, or we met at a home open or whatever. Hey, can you come around and give me an idea what my place is doing? What's the type of research that an agent should be doing prior to that appointment?
yeah, well, the only thing I really want to know from the person in that question is, have you made any changes to the property since you purchased it? I can find out how many beds and baths it is. I can find out everything on, we'll talk about where in a minute, but I want to know, have they made any changes recently or in the few years since they've had it? So then the research we're doing with things like RP data, called Logic, I go and look for the purchase when the client purchased the property. I'm looking at how long ago that was, the price that it was, the description of the property. There might be photos there. These days, there's often a lot of photos and information about the actual property before we've even left the building. From there, obviously, I want to create a picture of where that property may sit compared with other sales in the market. Again, RP data, looking at the last few months of sales in that suburb, and trying to find as many comparables as I can that meet that particular property. And as I said, using RP proposals, you may well be developing that section in there. But that sort of data, often a drive-by.
I was hoping you were going to say that. That was the very first thing that
Yeah.
I got tripped up with in my scenario, and probably the most helpful. Drive past the property and you'll find there's 6 houses for sale on the street. There's a bunch of broken down cars. There's a house with whatever next door, or a bad laneway, or
Mm,
something. Those things are helpful
mm.
information.
The police tape around the
The
front is
police
usually the
tape.
giveaway.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, just a drive-by to see how it's presented. Sometimes, we can do a quick Google Street View and things like that, but that can be a year old or more. But just a quick drive-by. Often they're not more than 10 or 15 minutes away. And if you're not going there for a couple of days, I think it's critical to have a
Yeah,
drive-by.
somebody said here, yeah, now it's a two-story, and on RP data it shows a single story.
Well, that's back to the part where I ask, what have you changed? Because if they say, oh, yeah, we've done an extension and renovation, it's like, okay, goalposts have changed.
Yeah,
I look up the sale from 2 years ago. It was 400,000. It's clearly not going to be about 500. It might be a million. So
yeah, that's right. Depending
all
on the
of the
suburb.
all of the sale data changes. So sometimes you can do that from our council websites, looking for permits and things, but you're better off just asking and then driving past. And certainly the drive-by is important, just to see how it's presented. If everything's clipped and spot on within an inch of its life, these people are going to have a board up in a week.
Yeah,
And if they've got someone there spraying the roof, or they've got anything giveaway that they're preparing, they're doing a garage sale, I don't know, whatever it might be, if they're preparing, that's an indication. If the place is looking quite haggard, or just lived in, like all of the houses perhaps look, lived in, and it's just a little snippet of information that maybe they're just getting an idea. They might be a little way off. They might be getting a divorce and one of them's left the building and the other one couldn't care less. Who knows?
you
But
you're doing the
um,
tour of the property, and you go in and there's only one set of clothes. There's two people
mm,
there, but there's only one set of clothes. You're thinking, that's interesting. They share a wardrobe. Fantastic. And those kind of things. Like, I can remember being at an appraisal and I think, they're not telling me the whole story here.
Mm.
telling me the whole
Look,
story.
and nearly all, I don't know that couples have ever gotten away with not telling you they're getting a divorce. It's usually it's usually evident. Some of them have tried. I've had listings where I've not found out until I've got an offer, and
Yeah,
they've been very good and cagey with it. But we don't want to dwell on divorce as being a that sort of prospect, but it's a fact of life at the moment. It's a big reason for sales.
yeah,
But just anything that they're doing with the property, you want to know that before you get there, just so you bring in the right comparables. Um, so that's something that that is critical, that drive past, just to get an idea. And as you mentioned, Rob, looking at the neighbourhood, just the street, then you also get an idea. So, oh, there's a park over the road. Oh yeah, there's the school just
I
around the
forgot there
corner.
was a park there, or I
Yeah,
forgot this, or yeah.
it may not be your neck of the woods, that very, very well. It might be, that end of there's a part of the suburb there, but you haven't sold a house there for a year, so you've just forgotten. And just going past and just realizing that, hey, yeah, well, there's a unit development next door. Anything that's going to impact the appeal or otherwise of the property, you want to get an idea before you get there. And yes, the 6 boards up next door, you will be finding that out when you do your research, but
Yeah.
you're sort of like, what's going on?
Yeah,
Something
something's
happened.
going on. Something's
Yeah.
going on. There's a street not too far from my place, and there's two families, let's say, and they're about 7 houses apart, and they literally have fights in the street.
Mm.
And there was a big one that happened a few months ago. Now, after that, strangely enough, two for sale signs went up not very long after that. So,
So
um,
you're saying if we know that there's any sort of activity negative in the street, we should start dropping some DLs.
well, if there's local entertainment happening, it's not a
Yeah.
bad thing. Tony, as we're coming to the end, I just wanted to ask a couple of things. One, how important is developing the skill to read the play at the appraisal? And two, what role do you think role play has for a newer agent that is trying to work through the receiving the call, the questions to ask, and actually doing the appraisal? Do you
Mm.
see there's any value in that?
Yeah. So read the play and role play, the two questions you've asked there. That the read the play and thinking on your feet is something that it depends on who you are and your experience in life in general and how comfortable a talker you are to strangers. Um, I'm not I'm not the friendliest person, but I can talk to anyone. So um, and any walk of life about anything, but and you need to develop that skill. But being able to read the play and just slow everything down. If you're not sure what's going on, ask a question, keep them talking. And role play, as you mentioned, can form a really good part of that. I don't know anyone that likes role play, but as a new agent, it's pretty important. Even role playing that first conversation on the phone, really, and throwing in some zingers of, the things that people might say. It is just teaching you to think on your feet.
Hmm.
And that's something that um, is important in your first year or two in real estate. And if you've got a buddy that you can pair up with and just, do some role play, and sometimes it's awkward, but once you get into it, if you set your roles and say, hey, let's just do this for a minute because I had this happen, whatever it might be, set your roles and do it. Even on the telephone, I know we're all not
Yeah.
in an office, but on the telephone, fantastic. You play the vendor, I'll pay the agent. I'm just ringing you back after you text me saying I'd like an appraisal or something like that. Practice that phone call because you really need to get that one right.
I'm only thinking, just as you're saying that, I'm only thinking back in my career where I seem to be mesmerized at every appraisal I went to in my early bit that people kept asking me what my fees were. And I thought, oh wow, they're going to actually ask this every single time.
Yeah,
And being comfortable with that, being able to talk about that and how you talk about that, and
yeah,
that came from role playing. And I
yeah.
do, because I'm an introvert by nature, I'll do a lot of role playing on my own, not necessarily with somebody. Sometimes I do it with just prop my phone up and record myself
Mm,
and whatnot. And it's interesting because even like when I watch back these recordings, my eyes are going here, there, everywhere, whatever, and my voice is this, or I stuttered here and I said and ah and whatever,
Mm,
and it's not as polished as what it could be.
mm,
And that's okay if you're comfortable with that. But if you're not comfortable with that and you feel like you've got to really present with poise and all
mm.
that, then you can just hone that skill.
And yeah, and Clinton's just mentioned there, he doesn't do it. Do it on the phone, Clinton, and you know, find someone that you can do it with for a half hour, a fortnight, or something like that, or then doing it alone, as Rob said. But being able to answer anything that comes up, and if you've been in long enough, you've heard some zingers. Our conversation today, Rob and I haven't scripted this. We're talking, and it's just being able to do that and being comfortable, and it does take practice. And if you're not a natural at it or an introvert, like Rob said, um, so yeah, just find someone that you can do it with, and then if you've got a listing and you've got people coming to opens, there's your role play practice. Do it with your buyers that are standing in front of you and ask them the questions. Where are you living at the moment? Why are you thinking of moving? When do you think you'd leave? Whatever the questions may be, but
Do you like it?
your
Yep.
role play practice is right there in front of you at an open with the buyers that are standing there. And then we're doing role play practice every time we have a vendor meeting,
Yeah.
or present an offer, or give them feedback about an inspection. Because they're going to ask things, and every conversation is a role play practice. And whilst when you're with a live person, you probably shouldn't get it wrong, like if you're practicing with a buddy. But I don't think you can get it very wrong if you've been in it a little while.
Yeah. And most situations where we're going to an appraisal, reading the play for me is really, really critical. It stems from the questions I ask at the start. It stems from what they showed me on the tour and what we're working out on the game plan. I like to get people, I ask enough questions that I get people to say yes 70 times, 70 times during an appraisal. And I find that gets them in sync with me. They're linked in with me, and then we can formulate a plan for them. But
Mm,
knowing that in advance, that's when I abandoned my winging it strategy that I had to start my real estate career, and being much more intentional.
mm,
And that leads you right from the before the appraisal, at the appraisal, asking for the business, taking the business, and moving forward. Tony, we're going
mm.
to continue this conversation on another session at some point in the future. But thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us a little about this. Yeah, Seb saying always ask open
Mm.
questions.
Yeah,
And I think that's so important. So thanks everybody for joining us on this AMP session. Hope you got something out of that, and thanks for being a part of it.
thank you all.